everyone, and welcome back. Today I am recording a very short rant about information that's shared online regarding historical figures. Kind of. I may have to come up with a better title than that. What it basically boils down to is how often I end up falling down a research rabbit hole because everybody says that this is so. And when I go looking, it turns out that's not the case. Now I have a specific example I'm going to rant about today. Otherwise, this would just be a repeat of rants that I've gone on several times. I am working on an in-depth class on Aconite. I've been working on it for a while because I just keep falling down new research rabbit holes. There's just always a new one that I end up falling down. But this week, it was regarding the practices of Thessalian and Syrian witches. So I was trying to confirm whether or not we know that Thessalian witches, other than Medea, made use of Aconite, how they did so, what is actually documented. Because we know they made use of poisons, but Aconite was primarily ascribed as a means via which powerful men killed their wives and as a hunting weapon in ancient Greek and Roman records. So I was kind of like, all right, did they for sure make use of this poison, this specific one? You'll have to watch the Aconite class once it goes up to find the answer to what I was able to prove and what I wasn't able to prove. But while looking into whether or not the Thessalian witches for sure used Aconite, right, other than Medea, who did, I ended up repeatedly coming across this reference on various witchcraft blogs that Marquesas said that the Syrian witches used Aconite in a very similar way to how the Thessalian witches are described as using Aconite. And I was like, oh, cool. Marquesas must be some Greek, Roman, or Syrian writer who's just not being very thoroughly cited here. They don't have his birth date, they don't have his death date, they don't say where he cited this, they don't say how he knew this. But okay, there must be some figure that I'm just not familiar with who exists from this time period, who existed in this time period, and I should go figure out what he wrote, and if there's more information on Syrian witchcraft that I can learn. But over and over and over again, all I found was Marquesas said this, Marquesas said this, Marquesas said this, Marquesas said this. And I'm like, okay, but who said Marquesas said that? And who the hell is Marquesas? And why do we care what he said? Where did he say it? When did he say it? I feel like I'm missing vital information to determine whether this goes in my book as a thing that happened. Well, I eventually found the book that everybody else is probably citing, which I'll put on the screen, which is an older text about witchcraft that I think probably everyone got that chunk from. So why do I think that everybody got their information from this book? Because they are essentially quoting it verbatim, but without citing it. So they're probably actually all quoting each other in circles, again without citing each other, but somebody originally got it from this book. So where did this book get it? Except that this book didn't have a citation. It just says Marquesas said this. And again, I'm going, okay, there must be some historical figure that I am not familiar with by this name. Is it a spelling issue? Was it spelled differently? I'm looking up Greek, I'm looking up Roman, I'm looking up Syrian, Marquesas. I eventually found it, kind of on accident, in a tiny little citation using just the right combination of keywords, that there was a figure named Pierre de Marquesas, who was a historian, author, and translator. Okay, so I search Pierre de Marquesas, Syrian witchcraft. And Pierre de Marquesas, Syria Aconite, and Pierre de Marquesas, and I eventually find that, yeah, it's this French historian and translator named Pierre de Marquesas, who lived in 1584 to 1664. So he is not an ancient figure, he was not there. And he did write a book on Greek history, which is unfortunately in French, so translation I'm not currently going to try and translate that out of French into English. I have too many other projects. So it's now in the book as Marquesas, this French historian, claimed that these Syrian witches made use of aconite in this way. I don't know for sure that they did, because this was not a contemporary recording what witches did that he actually observed. Now, there's a whole other debate here as to whether or not you can trust contemporary accounts, especially if they're denigrating the practices of someone that they dislike or distrust, or trying to blacken in the, in the eyes of other people if it's a political campaign. Like a lot of what the Romans wrote about Germanic practices, you can't necessarily trust because it was propaganda. So just because something is contemporary to the time period doesn't mean it's an accurate source. However, it does mean that it is culturally informative in a way that someone writing much later isn't always. You can't cite Marquesas as an ancient source because he wasn't. You can't say Marquesas described the practices of these Syrian witches in his time period because he wasn't there. Now, did anyone use those exact words? No. But you can see how it's not really being quite clear as to what figure it was that made this claim. So essentially what this boils down to is another rant about please stop citing each other in circles. Just because a blog said so, or a TikTok said so, or a Tumblr said so, or a Facebook post said so, doesn't mean that it is so. And is it always worth it to spend several hours tracking down the actual birth and death date of a historian? Depends on what your day job is. But just because a different witchcraft blog said that this was so does not mean that you can just copy that onto your witchcraft blog and participate in the spreading of inaccurate or misleading information. Additionally, I did find that several places were just straight up saying the Thessalian and Syrian witches made use of aconite in this fashion, and they didn't even bother citing Marquesas at all. So anyway, Rant concluded. Back to work. Be safe out there, everyone. Oh, please remember to like and subscribe. Comment with what else you want us to be teaching about, the classes that you really like. Send us questions for Ask a Witch and for Ask an Herbalist. I have several questions that I will be answering this week. And yes, I did see the repeated calls for more necromancy related content, and that is absolutely something that I am willing to do. If you have questions specific to necromancy or death magic, send me those. Be safe out there, everyone.